Thank you, Greg. Hey, we're talking tech today. We got the tech one. Woo! Last one before lunch. I'm with y'all. Okay, we're going to get through this. When they released the agenda, I saw they had 2 other breakout sessions at the same time. And I thought, oh no, we're going to split the audience. And then I saw the other 2 sessions and I realized, oh no, we're good. So I'm glad I'm just kidding. Chad Davis is, yeah, he's great. He's great. Anyway, so like I said, so great to be here in beautiful Denver. Let's give it up for the folks who turned up live today, who came all the way out here to join us live. A little round of applause. For the other half of folks whose flights got delayed and still aren't here yet. Sucks to be you. And I want to hear it from all the folks joining us virtually. I guess that doesn't work. Never mind. So I saw an article the other day about how everything that's happened in the last few years, dating has been down. Can't go on as many dates. And kind of talking through what are the long-term societal impacts of that, to which I immediately thought, as I'm sure you did, what about the accounting conferences? We couldn't do the accounting conferences. What are the long-term societal impacts of that? Probably not much. But so how are we? So the kind of virtual conference, right? We've kind of gotten used to that during the pandemic. The idea of tuning in virtually, it's kind of a different experience, right? Seeing a conference done virtually rather than in person. But how about the in-person people, right? Like you see the cameras all around. Like, how is this for you knowing that, oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of people watching me right now? Like you see all these cameras everywhere. It's odd, it's uncomfortable. When's he going to get to the tech stuff? Oh my, they can see us. They're looking at us. Oh, what do we do? Oh my gosh. Oh, jeez. It's weird, right? You've got all these people tuning in virtually, but it's kind of what we've all gotten used to now. Tech is amazing, right? It's what's bringing us all together today. And it's what's going to help you scale your people advisory practice. You see that pivot? How good was that? So today we're talking how to achieve your firm's optimal tech stack. Specifically, how can we use the model of the advent of cloud accounting? Now 15 years old with a massive ecosystem of tools that we rely on every day. How can we use the model of cloud accounting to inform how we engage with the growing people advisory ecosystem? A lot of cool tools that are out now to help us with this. On the accounting side, we've learned to solve clients' problems with tech. We've built up that muscle memory now, right? Oh, you're having issues with receipts? App ABC, here's the different ways that we can help you solve that problem. So how do we develop that same muscle memory for people advisory? How should we think about leveraging tech to enable people opportunities, not just accounting opportunities, but people opportunities? So this is me. You got the intro from Greg. I love doing stuff like this. I think it's a really cool opportunity to rub shoulders with the smart people in our profession. I was talking with a client last week. We were working through something, and I said, hey, just FYI, I'm going to be in Denver next week. I just wanted him to know I was going to be out of the office. And he goes, oh, Denver is beautiful, so much to do. What are you going to do while you're there? It's an accounting conference. Oh, okay, yeah. And I'm speaking at it. Okay, well, just let me know when the financial statements are ready. And that was kind of ran out of steam there. But take that, virtual attendees. I've got my out of office on. We all do, right? Virtual attendees, ooh, not so much. So here's kind of the 3 main topics we're going to cover today. One, sort of a case study on how the cloud accounting ecosystem developed. This is a pretty forward-looking group. We're all well aware of what the cloud accounting ecosystem looks like, but we're going to look specifically at how it developed and how you could build a practice around this ecosystem as it was developing. Still early days for the people advisory ecosystem. A lot of cool stuff out there already, but how do we kind of work around it while it's in motion, while it's developing, and that whole landscape is maturing? 2, people advisory ecosystem. What have we got out there today? What are the tools that Gusto has to help us discover the right apps for the right people opportunities with our clients? We're going to throw a whole list of people advisory opportunities up on this whiteboard. Stuff like employee retention, attracting the right type of hire. Then marry those opportunities with the apps that are available today. Again, in the same way that we've developed the muscle memory for the cloud accounting ecosystem, we're going to start doing the same thing for our people advisory practice. Too many exercise analogies. Was there a lot of talk of muscles, or was that just me? So 3, productizing your approach. It's another thing to hack together a solution for a client in kind of a one-off context. It is a whole nother thing to productize it, to enable your team and to systematize that approach. So we'll look at the traditional people advisory service offerings, the stuff you see in the accelerator, and talk through how app advisory plugs into that. Is it the same thing? Is it a totally different thing? I think it's going to be different for each firm, but we're going to talk through what makes the most sense for you and your practice. Okay, so we have all seen, this graphic. It goes from like 5 apps to 1,000 apps. And the idea here is this is like a really fast-growing accounting ecosystem, so much going on. You look into here and you're like, yeah, I still don't see like half the apps I use though, right? But we've got this kind of sub-economy of apps that are rallying around opportunities. It's really exciting. We saw this in accounting, and now we're seeing it in people advisory. The ecosystem is finding the most impactful opportunities and developing resources around those. And right now, what's bigger than people? I mean, it's always been the case, but now more than ever, people are considering, how do I build a more self-aware, employee-centric workplace to attract and retain talent? I don't know that there's any bigger thing that small business owners are navigating today than that, and it's why the people advisory ecosystem is such a great opportunity for both advisors and developers alike. Now, for myself, as a firm owner, I got to look at all the things my client wants me to do, of which there are many, and think, how does people advisory slot into that? Is that something I should be digging further into? And for me, the conversation always comes back to this conversation I have with the client. Hey, we can do your bookkeeping. How much is it going to cost? Hey, we can help you create a more attractive place to work, a healthier place to work, retain better talent. And they're like, they got the checkbook out. They're like, absolutely. How do I sign up? Because they know the cost of not having the right person, right? We've all experienced this. The cost of not having the right person is huge to your business. So it's hard to imagine a greater opportunity for advisors to capture right now than this. Now, on this graphic, it's hard to see. In the top right, the date is June 2016. The next year, the graphic doubled in size again. And at a certain point, I think you kind of just give up. But to take it back to the early cloud accounting days, where folks were used to running their business on desktop apps, these one-size-fits-all solutions, if you'd have sat down a client and said, hey, let me show you the future, they'd have been like, oh, no, that's really cool. You can't make sense of that. So not a chance they're making sense of that, right? So who's going to be the interpreter of all this? It's going to be the accountants. Because that's not actionable. They don't know how to make sense of that. That's where the accountants stepped in on cloud accounting, and it's where accountants are stepping up on people advisory. Now, when the ecosystem took off, it was us that was able to make sense of it. We worked through projects with a bunch of small businesses. We saw what worked and what didn't, had a lot of shared experience with our colleagues, with other people in the industry, and eventually the winners emerged, the best apps to solve certain types of problems. I love the Wayback Machine, Internet Archive. Remember apps.com? Oh man. The QuickBooks Solution Marketplace. This was cutting edge stuff. This is 2006, 16 years ago. I was about 3 years old. Find your software solution by industry, by business function. QuickBooks for Pocket PC PDAs. I love that one. Just think about how far this has come in like the last 15 years. Not really all that long in the grand scheme of things, right? Here we are 10 years later, 2016. We saw how that ecosystem had exploded, and now we're using marketplaces to kind of sift through these apps, try to make sense of all of it. This is actually a really fun rabbit hole to go down. You can like click into all these categories, and if you were doing this stuff in 2016, like super takes you back. But what does this all mean for people advisory? Well, at some point in this ecosystem's development, accountants started catching on. Many of the apps represented a big opportunity for our clients. They had a lot to offer, but was it realistic for the business owner to be the one to put that into action, to make it happen, to know what to even use? The marketplaces, as helpful as they were, all you really had were like reviews, which is kind of one-dimensional. But your accountant could add the context because they quickly became master implementers. They had the experience of seeing what worked and what didn't. And before long, the app advisory itself actually kind of became a core tenet of running a cloud accounting practice. How to know what apps to use, plugging those into the right situations. We started to see some frameworks begin to emerge to help us think through how to productize app advisory. So accountants realize, hey, we can capitalize this for our clients. We could be the one to kind of find the right solution since business owners couldn't do it themselves. And so these frameworks began to develop about how you build a business around that because they couldn't do it themselves, which isn't that how it always goes? There's this new important thing. How are we going to get this done, though? How about the accountants? They could do that, right? Didn't they just do all that other stuff? Yeah, no, I'm sure they'll be good for it, though, right? It always gets stuck with the accountants when there's that big, challenging thing. The trouble is the accounting system is the backbone of small business, and you are smack in the middle of it. The tool that's their accounting ledger is also their first CRM. But as far as the client's concerned, it's still the accounting app. So let's ask Tina about it, right? Honestly, it's a fantastic problem to have, and we're now seeing the same development around people. Hey, thanks for getting me set up with Gusto. I see I can integrate benefits into this. What do I do? I'm an accountant. What do I know about benefits? But they're still coming to you, right? Because you're the one that's helping them through that platform. I'm not sure at what point this came to be, but the universe decided on the Venn diagram of hard problems and people suited to solve them, that intersection point was a group of slightly tired and grouchy people who also do accounting. Inevitably, it's just us. Like it keeps coming back to us being the solution for that, right? And that's why for me, like these accounting conferences are so valuable. You get to share ideas with peers and all that. But that's all right. So, app advisory. Among the frameworks that emerged from cloud accounting on how to approach app advisory in your practice, one of my favorites is the Xero App Playbook, or the App Advisory Playbook by Xero. It's still out there. You can go out and get it. And it distills app advisory down to a simple framework. App recommendation, app implementation, and full app advisory, kind of your brain as a service. And like so many aspects of what we do as accountants, it was one of those things where I first saw it and I was like, well, I already do that. I guess before I just didn't know what to call it, and by extension, probably wasn't charging for it. So it's a really helpful framework to kind of give you the vocabulary you need to productize this admittedly abstract thing. That's why I love this playbook, is when we're looking at people advisory, how do we develop kind of the vernacular around exactly what it is we're doing? So as we toe the line between solving our clients' problems and recognizing when that conversation has become something more, you have something to go to. You can say, yeah, I think this is what you need. We can help you with this package. Because talking benefit packages is not tax, is not accounting. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't identify as being this sort of advisor, but it's exactly what our clients need right now. So let's look at Xero's framework a little deeper here, because I think it informs how we can approach people advisory. So, app recommendation. This is service level 1, the most basic. As accountants, we are never short on opinions. Oh, most of us are already slinging app recommendations like the waiter's got its specials, like you don't hold that stuff back, you just give it to them whether they want it or not. The waiter might be a bad analogy because if you had a waiter that was that opinionated, that might make for an uncomfortable restaurant experience. But, so we really push the apps that we use because we've seen the flip side of that. Oftentimes, we're the ones to pay the price for it. And so we're super opinionated about what they should use, but that doesn't mean we should still give those recommendations away for free. It's important to productize how you make those recommendations because that expertise is gold. You want to ensure you're asking all the right questions to understand the client profile. It's easy to shoot from the hip and say, hey, just do this or that, but you want to make sure you understand the problem. You want to give them a deliverable at the end that says, we think this one's your best bet, here's why, and here's a few other potential options and why we didn't pick them. A little report. It's kind of like laminating something. People give you bits of paper all day long, but you get something that's laminated, oh, mama, that's not going in the garbage can, right? You got to laminate don't laminate your recommendations. You got to give them something that feels like a deliverable, puts a little heft behind that recommendation. Now, as the people advisory ecosystem grows, you're going to start developing that same opinionated feeling. When they go with that app that you're like, oh my gosh, couldn't we have talked about this beforehand? You're going to get that same really opinionated feeling. But with people advisory, it's not, hey, how can we manage our receipts better? It's, here's a platform I recommend to better attract and retain talent. It is heavy stuff that really impacts their business. And that's what's so compelling right now about the marriage of tech and people advisory is there's no bigger problem that they're facing. Clients, you talk through, doing bill pay or something like that, and they're like, oh, do I have to do that? Like, how much is that going to cost? Is that something I can have an internal person do? But you start talking about how to attract and retain talent, and they're like, holy smokes, where do I sign up? Like, this is great. It's about people, right? Small business has always been about people. So what makes this so exciting is it's enabling people. So that was level 1. Level 2 is implementation. We've gone from app recommendation to app implementation. At level 1, it was your client's responsibility to implement. It was self-led. They worked with the vendor, did it all themselves, set everything up themselves, did it without any of your guidance, and I'm sure it went completely fine. Right? Never goes wrong. They always get it right. Everybody here is being very polite. The virtual attendees just went very deep into the bag of colorful words. So the power of packaging. The next time you make a recommendation with the same client, you say, maybe our implementation package makes more sense for you. We can handle setup on your behalf, and you won't bungle it up like you did last time. So that's level 2. That's app implementation. It's not a lifelong commitment. You're getting everybody on board, getting them the resources they need to get going, but from there, they're still on their own. And it's at this stage that your practice can start building reusable resources to scale this. So whether we're talking accounting or people advisory, the same rules apply here. For example, you got a few go-to apps in your advisory practice, the ones that you really like, that you end up using a lot. You're presumably going to have an implementation expert, the person who has seen things. They know the buttons not to push, and they know the switches where if flipped, they create bad things. So that member of your team becomes that implementation expert, and they can begin to build out sort of a training resource library. In an age of work that's becoming more asynchronous, that is, people aren't doing as much live meetings, they're leaning into asynchronous communication, a self-service training library can be a really powerful tool. Now, context is key here, but implementing an app for a 10th time, if you've got a rock-solid training library, what is the value of that library to your clients? Certainly not tied to the time that you spent on it. It becomes really valuable. Now you're building scalable resources inside of an advisory practice. An advisory practice you can build top dollar for because it's high context. You sent them down this path, it's exactly what they need, but you can still build scalable things around that. So, app implementation, it's the upsell when you don't have a high degree of confidence in them doing it correctly themselves. Okay, full app advisory. We're going all in now. And there's another opportunity to build some great client-facing resources. Like when you are going all in, I think the impression of this is it's a bunch of like ad hoc, like sitting with the wizard and talking through all this technical stuff. It's a little bit of that, but it's a balance of how many reusable things can you pull into the process. So we are all Gusto users here. Virtual people raising their hands, super weirding people out in the room. Pop quiz time. What was the last time a client asked you a question about Gusto that you had never heard before? It's probably been a while. 90% of the questions you get about apps are samey same. Hey, can you update that direct deposit account for me? No. Hey, if I terminate this employee, will they get an email notification? Can you send me my password? No, that's not how it works. As you build out your preferred tech stack, you're going to get all those questions. And this is a great opportunity to build a client-facing resource center. But all together now, the client will still just ask me. I get that. But here's how you still come out ahead. You build that explainer yourself about how to update your direct deposit account. You build that out once, and your entire practice can leverage it. So rather than walking someone through it on the phone, it's a quick, hey, great question. Check this out. Steve, got a little video where Steve walks you through how to do it yourself. Give us a shout if you run into any issues. You're building resources to scale your app advisory practice while still wearing that full advisory hat. One other thought here. Full app advisory is a great way to build the skills of your implementation specialist. So if you don't have the confidence right now to pull in that people advisory ecosystem, if you're still learning, still getting comfortable with those tools, advisory is a great way to get that expertise. If all you ever do is make recommendations, you don't necessarily see the full cycle of how that app is used. So as the advisor, you're going to be able to give better practical day-to-day like experiences of what it looks like to use that app. That's going to help with implementation, and it's actually going to make you give better recommendations because you understand how it's used from end to end. And honestly, like that is one of the greatest privileges of what we do. We see into so many businesses. Like, where else do you get that experience? The fact that you're able to see so many different businesses' circumstances, and as a result, know what's going to be right for that next person. And that's why it's so important that we can't give that away. Like, that is such a cool, unique opportunity. So, what does your pricing model look like for each service level? How do you put boundaries around ongoing support? We're going to end today by putting the traditional Gusto People Advisory package up alongside an app advisory package, figure out where they overlap. But first, let's explore the state of the People Advisory app ecosystem. We've got our favorite apps on the accounting side. We've got that muscle memory. There's the muscles again. Let's do the same thing on the People Advisory side. Remember those marketplace slides? Ta-da, we're still doing that today. Hasn't changed. 16 years later, it's still the best way to discover what's out there, but it's still your experience and context that will actually show clients what's right for them. Now, what I like about this is we've got everything up there by function. So down the left-hand side, something you're going to be familiar with: accounting, biz ops, collaboration, expense management, financial benefits, hiring and onboarding, learning management, compliance, performance management, point of sale, what? Rewards and recommendations, rewards and recognition, tax prep, time tracking. It is a great jumping off point for those people advisory opportunities. It kind of feels, to me, it kind of feels like early days where you spent a lot of time in that marketplace, but once you got comfortable with it, you didn't go back to it quite as much because you had your favorites. We've got this as a place to kind of get you started. And important to note, not unlike the accounting problems our clients share, our clients share many of the same people opportunities, which means building out reusable resources. When you hear X, you have that aha, light bulb goes off because you've already helped 10 other clients do the exact same thing. Now I want to sidebar for a minute here, because I think not only do many businesses share the same opportunities, but many of us, the advisors in this room, the people turning in virtually, have clients facing the exact same circumstances, the same pain points, the same issues, risks. So this whiteboard wasn't up here just to make me look smart. We're going to take a little break, And we're going to, the live folks, cluster into groups, the people who are by you. It's going to get weird. That's okay. Talk through, like, what are the most common things your clients are feeling? Is it retention? Is it high? What are those pain points? Maybe like bubble up the 3 or 4 most common amongst you. Virtual people, shout it into your computer monitor. I think that's how it works. And we'll pull out a few of those to kind of have a discussion around that. We'll do that a couple minutes, and then we'll throw those up on a whiteboard. After that, we're going to go through the apps and start like marrying apps with issues. So talk amongst yourselves, and we'll start kind of gathering some of those most common issues y'all are feeling. Hey, let's throw some stuff on the whiteboard. I suspect we're going to have a lot of overlap. Shrez is going to come around with a microphone, and we'll just chuck a few things up here.
Yes, fine.
What do you got?
Well, I will say that other feedback shared in the group was better, but I got handed the microphone, so I'll give it a go. I think that there is a generational shift happening, that if you are maybe more Gen X, Boomer, your view of staff and employees is a little different from a value perspective. As a generalization, but
sure.
Finding that appreciation and engagement is different across employer generations. And then 2, a big pain point from an employer and employee standpoint is how am I reviewed? So is there a process by which I know out of a 5 I'm a 4, or is it just what my boss thinks of me this week? And on the inverse side, a lot of our CEOs are, I don't know what anyone's doing back there. So having a process around review,
feedback,
and performance,
review.
Exactly, is missing.
Cool. Let's grab a couple more, just kind of rapid fire.
One of the things that came up on our end was how to handle contractors. So a lot of times when people are hiring contractors, they're just like, however you submit your information, we'll take it that way, but really making that streamlined so that they're receiving the information from every contractor the same way so that they can do their jobs easier.
Yeah. We talked about how contractors are way more prevalent now than they were.
So from our conversation was the redundancy of apps. Certain apps do certain features, what you turn on, what you turn off.
Okay.
The redundancy is kind of hard to manage sometimes,
sure.
Where you want things to go.
I also have some online virtual attendees. There's a lot of feeling overwhelmed, confused, exhausted. But then there's things like being able to keep up with legislative changes or tax compliance changes.
Yep.
And figuring out how to set up benefits to retain and attract talent.
What was that last bit? Benefits for?
To retain and attract talent.
Sure. Okay.
Right.
Cool, let's roll with this. This is a good list. Sorry, this is a right-handed whiteboard, so sorry that's messy. Okay, so we got a great list of common people advice. Yeah, that's a stupid joke.
I think there's one more.
Yeah.
I'm going to pass the mic on to the person who brought it up. No? No? What do you mean no? We have been discussing what happens when you are talking with a client, you have a tech stack, you set them up, and then it's crickets. They don't use them. It's more like a gym membership.
What do you mean? You've got clients like that?
Oh, yeah.
What? So client engagement?
Client engagement. And I'm big on client education, and so we've been discussing how do we bring about designing this for them to where they are excited to be engaged with it.
Yeah. Yeah, so is there a compelling outcome that they can get behind?
Right. And honestly, it's part of the sales pitch. We need to have the right verbiage at the time that we're talking to them to begin with.
Yeah, are you solving a problem that they're like feeling in a very real way at that time, right? Cool, perfect. Okay, that's a good list. Honestly, this is a great exercise to do with your team. So if you're building comfort around people advisory in that ecosystem. Throw that stuff up on a whiteboard. Start digging through Gusto's app directory. These apps are really different than your accounting stack. It's a very different problem that it's solving. So for each of these things, what I'd recommend, you go through this with your team, and for each of these opportunities, we'll call them, find a couple of apps that can solve that opportunity. And you've got a much more informed starting point then for how you begin tackling those people advisory opportunities. Cool. So this is a great starting point for us. We're going to go through the app directory. This will kind of give you some ideas to start solving those most common problems that your clients have. So we're going to look at BizOps. Business operations. When I think BizOps, I think setting clear expectations of your team. Overwhelm, I know, feedback to a degree, appreciation, understanding what the expectations are of your team. That's something that small businesses struggle with. Moving towards more of a results-based company culture. I think employers are moving towards being more hands-off than ever before, and that flexibility has put the attention back on exactly what each employee is expected to deliver. We got a whopping 56 apps in business operations that integrate with Gusto in one form or another. I say one form or another because the directory actually shows how these apps integrate with Gusto, exactly what that integration is. Because as we know, not all integrations are made equal. You may say it integrates with this or that. Ugh. We all know that feeling. I love ClickUp. Any other ClickUp users here? I see you virtual hands again. I saw this and I was like, why is ClickUp in the Gusto app directory, right? Like what's the overlap there? So this page gives you some background about exactly what ClickUp does if you're not familiar. But down at the bottom, you've got this app capabilities section. If I had $1 for every time I didn't know what was going to integrate until I had integrated with it, right? You just like connect it and you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? Not a good place to be at. So in this case, like we know exactly what we're getting before we do it. In this case, it's provisioning. If you connect ClickUp with Gusto, when you add and remove employees, it'll provision ClickUp accounts accordingly. That's handy. I use ClickUp, I actually do. I use Gusto. It's one less thing I have to fuss with when I'm onboarding and offboarding team members. Now, as an example of a pretty simple thing that could kind of be a throwaway recommendation to a client, but when you hear stuff like, we've struggled with employee onboarding, or we haven't been the best about deprovisioning accounts for team members who are no longer with us. That's a spooky one. Stepping in with an integration like this could be a big win. It may be like, oh yeah, no, here's a kind of a throwaway recommendation. It's a big deal. So this is stuff as simple as this can be a big win for your clients. Let's look at the RDS integration. They were actually acquired by Gusto in 2021. You may have used them for R&D or employee retention credits. This is a way more robust integration. So it's going to sync all of your employee data back and forth, which you need for calculating R&D credits and ERCs. But you see that before you set up the integration. Now let's rapid fire through some more of these apps and maybe kind of put them in context of the stuff we put on the whiteboard here. So, financial benefits. Where's this one going to come up in client conversation? Probably around building a more compelling benefit package to attract and retain talent. Here we've got some 401k options, betterment guideline, human interest, but also GradVisor, which I wasn't familiar with. Turns out they do 529 plans. I got a bunch of people with young families in my firm. If that's the type of person I want to attract and hire, that could be a great benefit for them. Let's talk hiring and onboarding. It's a really hard thing for small businesses to do well. In my opinion, if you're really investing in hiring, you need to have an applicant tracking system. It's a huge time saver and ensures you're squeezing everything you can out of that process because it's hiring. What's more important than hiring? This is almost one of those non-negotiable recommendations that I would bring to the table in a people advisory engagement. Whether you're using Gusto's built-in recruiting platform for public job listings or a dedicated applicant tracking system that integrates with Gusto, most small businesses I talk to today don't know what an applicant tracking system is. For you, that's a great opportunity. It could be a big unlock for your client. And so that's, for me, many of our people advisory engagements start with how are you getting people in, and an applicant tracking system has actually pretty much become non-negotiable. Another one of my favorites here, learning management system. Small businesses often run on tribal knowledge, the things you just pick up through proximity, working with those other people, and it often isn't until a company grows much bigger that you start investing in people development, learning management systems. As we talked about though, employment's getting more hands-off. Work's happening in a more distributed way, and you lose some absorption of tribal knowledge when you don't have that proximity to your colleagues. Learning management system, great way to help out that situation, to standardize that tribal knowledge. Performance management, oof, that came up several times up here. Another example of something that upmarket companies do relatively well that most small businesses haven't really standardized. What's the ongoing review cycle look like? Are you setting clear expectations for all of your team members? Do they know exactly what their job is, what they're supposed to do? It's a very abstract thing for a business owner to think through for the first time. But when you pull in an app like this, it can put a lot of aspects of that on rails for you. Last, rewards and recognitions. This is an example, I think, of where Gusto as a platform can really help you as an advisor proactively identify a great opportunity. So, one thing I love about Gusto is their team surveys. You build out a few questions, they go out to your team members on a recurring basis, and a couple of those questions cover recognition and morale. And this is such a cool opportunity, I think, because the Gusto platform is now bubbling up to us those advisory opportunities. You start thinking about what things like these team surveys can enable, they can really be an early indicator to this. For every person that you've got here, probably got a couple more who are at the early stages of that. So how do you get out ahead of it and make that recommendation? Bigger picture, you think about the different ways people in our profession approach what we do. How at its best, we're being proactive. At its worst, that relationship is more transactional. We do work when they bring us work to do. And when we're swamped and behind, you totally fall into that trap. But you want to blow your client away, this is what compelling people advisory looks like to me. Your team starts with a process very similar to what we've done here today. What are the common pain points that your clients feel? But you go one step upstream from each of these indicators. So what is the early indicator for each of these issues? Let's templatize some client outreach to get ahead of it. Because you know what would blow away that client? A member of your team sees in Gusto, hey, according to your team survey, it looks like recognition and morale are starting to flag a little bit. I'm going to grab this templated email we've got to have a discussion about rewards and recognition. Hey, we noticed these indicators in your data, reviewed your people stack, and we think there's an opportunity here. Imagine being that client, that business owner. Oh, okay, let's talk about it. Yes, you got a solution for this? Please, I am all ears. To me, that's the power of actually the Gusto platform. The idea that it's going to bring these things to your attention that you may not otherwise have on your radar. So, one section to go. Okay, talking through how to productize your approach. This is all well and good, but how do I build this into a package? Well, I think honestly, probably my favorite thing that's come out of Gusto in the last few years has been the accelerator. Hopefully you guys, a few of y'all got to experience that yesterday. If you haven't yet, it is such a fantastic resource. It is like a people advisory practice in a box. Even comes with some great video content. Here's Will taking a little nap. But it covers everything. Super, super detailed. Task templates down to the service level. What are the tasks that go into doing that work? Pricing calculators, marketing templates. I love it. I tell people I actually think the accelerator program has redefined what a partner program looks like in our industry. We've all seen the bronze, silver, gold tiered systems, and that kind of is what it is. This isn't just incentivizing using the product, it's showing you how to build an entire practice around it. It's one thing to use an app. It's another thing to build a business around it. Hold yourself out as an expert, understand how to price it, all the squishy things that go with actually running a profitable practice. Now, hands down, my favorite resource in there is called the Client Services Inventory. This thing is robust. It keeps going and going. It's in Excel. Hey. It is a giant list of the services that you should consider when you're looking at people advisory, and kind of gives you some of that vocabulary to be able to confidently talk about what you can do for people. Because people advisory, when we first hear it, what we immediately think is, what are all the things that go into that? Is that the things that I'm already doing? Is it things that I'm not doing yet? This was super helpful for me. But nowhere in this gigantous list of service offerings is software mentioned. Nowhere does it mention apps, integrations, building people muscles, that whole last 40 minutes, none of that stuff, nowhere to be found. I'm not upset, I'm just disappointed. So where does the ecosystem come in to your people advisory practice? I think there's two paths you can take here, and the right answer for you will depend on how you answer this question. Can tech advisory be separated from people advisory? If you look at the service packages in the people advisory toolkit, 3 service levels: Essential, Advanced, Premium. Looking at those service levels, they actually track pretty well with the app advisory tiers that we were talking about earlier. If you remember level 1's recommendation, people are onboarding themselves. It's largely self-guided stuff. And people advisory, that first tier is centered around kind of self-service access to the Gusto platform. You're not doing it for them, they're doing it themselves. Level 2 is focused on implementation in the case of that app advising. In Gusto, level 2 is you're running the payroll, but you're not really doing any real advisory until you get to level 3. It's all in on advisory. We aren't just processing payroll anymore, we're thinking proactively, being strategic. App advisory, level 3, really the same way, being strategic. How do you get out ahead of it? Now, the big difference here is out of the box, Gusto, that people advisory toolkit, it is what can be managed natively within the Gusto platform. It's not the ecosystem. So how do you answer this question? I'm going to go back to the accounting tech stack analogy. Today, how I do accounting for clients is inseparable from the apps that we use. Oftentimes, it's non-negotiable. But it wasn't always this way for me. Early on in the desktop days, I didn't say, hey, you got to use this suite of apps. We're all recovering from desktop, where everything had to happen in a single place. So in the beginning, I would have said, yeah, no, I'm not as opinionated as I am now. But these days, no. If I'm doing your accounting, more than likely, I'm picking the apps that we're doing it on. Those things have become inseparable. So when we think about this through the lens of people advisory, the right answer for you probably comes down to your comfort level with that ecosystem. Gusto out of the box does a lot. If you're not yet feeling the pressure to pull in those third-party apps, app advising is probably a separate thing. But I think as you develop more comfort with the ecosystem, we're going to end up in the same place, where those things really become inseparable. You've got your go-to tools for the different things small businesses need, and those become kind of this inseparable, unified package. But we aren't all there yet. And if you aren't there yet, app advisory is probably a separate package. It could be as simple as the framework we talked about today: recommendation, implementation, and advisory. So I think over time we're going to get to where it's probably a unified thing, but everybody may not be there today. So until you get to that point where it's a unified set of deliverables, you've got app advisory. I'd recommend this Zero framework. I think it's a great way to think through how to do app advisory in your people advisory practice. Okay. Going to close it out with a few last thoughts here, future tech things to consider as you're positioning your firm. I think just like we saw in accounting, investment will follow opportunity. There is no greater opportunity right now than people, and expect to see this ecosystem explode, because as we learn how these tech opportunities can enable people advisory, the biggest struggle small businesses are feeling that's going to explode. It's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. Develop ecosystem expertise. So go through this exercise with your team. Start to develop more of a comfort level with those apps that are trending in that space. It's going to help you to speak confidently to people advisory with this, kind of like how you have that confidence with accounting. Like, think about the difference there right now. You have that confidence with accounting because you've done so much of it. Keep investing in developing that ecosystem expertise. You'll get to the same place on the people advisory side. Last, connect platform insights to people opportunities. This is why I love Gusto. This is what makes this such a compelling opportunity for us. Like we said, start here, but think upstream from here, because every person that's living this right now, you probably got a couple more that are for whom that is just around the corner. Gusto is putting fantastic data in front of us to help enable those advisory opportunities. So what is the thing we need to look out for in the platform that should kick off that proactive discussion with the client? That's what's so exciting to me about the Gusto platform and kind of the insights it's putting in front of us now. I've been Jason Staats. Thank you all so much for being here.